I'm Jen Danifel. I'm PHC's Senior Program Officer, and I'll be walking you through the webinar today, along with some help from our PHC staffers who are in the room with me today, but you can't see them. We are so glad you all can join us. We've had such great interest in this webinar and the program, and so we're really, really excited to see libraries from across the state participate today and show interest in the project. This webinar was designed to provide libraries with information about the Teen Reading Lounge project, the goals, and the overview of the TRL model, as well as important information on the application selection process. We hope today's presentation also clarifies if this is the right opportunity for you. We've had, like I mentioned, an incredible amount of interest in this webinar today, so we're keeping everybody on mute. Again, I want to encourage you, if you are having any issues or you have questions throughout, you can use the chat box and we'll do our best to pick those up as we're going along. And then we'll also have some Q&A near the end. We've had some questions submitted via the Google Drive, but you can also, again, use the chat box to ask questions, and we'll pick them up, particularly at the end when we do our Q&A. And if we don't get to everything, I just want to mention we're going to do our best to collect those questions and record them, and then type some answers up and share those along with the slides and the recording. And yes, that is the biggest question we've been getting. Are we going to share the slides? Are we going to share the recording? Yes, and you'll get all the notes and all the details so that you guys can refer to it, you know, as you're applying or, you know, as you're deciding whether or not you want to apply. Okay, so many of you know who the Pennsylvania Humanities Council is, but there may be some of you folks out there who don't know who we are. So this is a great opportunity for us to say hello and to introduce ourselves. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about PHC generally, and also about the Teen Reading Lounge project, or the Teen Reading Lounge program specifically. So the Pennsylvania Humanities Council is an independent partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities and part of a network of 56 state humanities councils that spans the nation and U.S. jurisdictions. Today, across the Commonwealth, we put the humanities in action to create positive change. Our programs and grants provide Pennsylvanians together, bring Pennsylvanians together to build avenues for civic involvement and community development, and for youth and adult learners to strengthen skills for school, work, and personal improvement. Our operations are funded in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we also get some additional funding from generous individuals, other foundations, corporations, and government agencies. And I'll talk a little bit about the funding stream for TRL in a little bit. We encourage you, the pictures on the screen depict some of our many programs that we do here. A lot of them are Teen Reading Lounge focused, because that's what we're talking about today. But we encourage you to visit us at pahumanities.org and to take a look around and learn about our work. So what about Teen Reading Lounge? So we're going to talk about the project, which is kind of, you'll see, is much bigger than just offering the Teen Reading Lounge program at your site. But the actual project itself, when we first launched Teen Reading Lounge, it really just was a program. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and also kind of where we've gone throughout the course of the first part of this webinar. So TRL is our flagship program under our Education Initiatives umbrella. It's designed for public libraries, and it launched in 2010. Also an award-winning program that encourages youth ages 12 to 18 to discuss big ideas and design projects that bring these ideas to life. TRL is based on the belief that the humanities can be an effective tool for positive youth development, and through facilitated discussion and hands-on learning and community projects, youth build a better understanding of themselves, their peers, and the communities they live in. We've been lucky to see over 80 sites across the Commonwealth participate since 2010. In recent years, those sites also include some school-based sites and community organizations, not just libraries. And then over 1,500 youth from diverse backgrounds have participated. TRL is a product of a long-standing collaboration with the Office of Commonwealth Libraries, and funds for this program come from the Library Services and Technology Act funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Additional funding for the program is provided by NEH, who I mentioned earlier, and some private donors. I want to mention the graphic on the screen with the pins in it shows, actually PHC program activity across the board, across the state with all of our programs. But those red pins represent the teen reading lounge sites that have happened since 2010. You can actually go on our website under the impact section. You'll see at the top there's a section called impact, and actually click on those pins and read about the teen reading lounge programs and the different libraries and what they look like. And we encourage you to do that. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about PHC, you know a little bit about the program and its kind of, inception and kind of where it came from, we want to get down to business and talk about what you guys all came here for, which is learning more about the 2019-2021 Teen Reading Lounge project. So I'm going to provide some information that you can also, of course, find in the guidelines and on our website, but I hope that this helps, provide just a little bit more information so you guys know, what the opportunity is, what we're offering. So in recent years, I want to mention that TRL has moved to a multi-year model, which means that once chosen, libraries host the program for 2 years. In the past, it used to be kind of just a one-year program. But what we've learned is that libraries being able to take on the program for 2 years actually increases the outcomes, the positive outcomes we see in youth, and really gives them the space and the time to engage young people, particularly some of those harder audiences to reach, and to actually just figure out what the program's all about, how it works in their community, and make adjustments. So for this 2019 and 2021 program, it's a 2-year commitment from October 1, 2019 to September 30th, 2021. So those that are selected would be in for that 2-year period. And in addition, we've learned that supporting our libraries by providing training on key topics is crucial to building staff's confidence, skills, and sustaining the program's success. So in a second, I'll talk a little bit about the TRL network and how we do that capacity building work. So libraries, like I mentioned, that are selected would be on for 2 years, and they would receive funding, $8,000 per year to offset programming, staffing, and other related costs. So I want to mention that we are not, you may have noticed in the application that we're not asking for a budget at this time, because that's something that selected libraries would build once they're in the program. But I do want to mention a couple things, just so you're aware, because the program is funded sourced from federal funding, from IMLS. There are some restrictions on the funding. So I just want folks to be really aware of that before they come into the process. So some of the restrictions are that you can't use any of these funds on full-time staffing, infrastructure or general operating costs, food, lobbying or advocacy efforts, fundraising events, or any major equipment purchases. And that's usually like equipment purchases over $5,000. But funds can be used on things like part-time staff on the project up to 25 hours, program supplies, the facilitator fee, which we'll talk about that facilitator role in a little bit, and special guest speakers, if you decide to bring those into your program too. Funds can also offset field trip or community project costs. When we talk about the civic engagement piece, you guys will get what that, what that's all about. And I mentioned that we will work with selected libraries in the fall to begin building a budget for their site. But I just wanted folks to be aware of that as you're coming into the process, what funding can be used on and what it can't, what it can't be used on. So, and as I mentioned before, a big benefit of being part of this process is having access to what we're now calling the Teen Reading Lounge Learning Network. So those 80 sites that we talked about before, you'd have access to, past sites. And in addition, those that are selected for the project, we call them a cohort. You'd have peer-to-peer support in your current cohort with that cohort. And PHC offers exclusive trainings, resources during the course of the project. We also, I'm going to go into this in depth, we do workshops and also some one-on-one coaching as well. To give you a sense of what the training topics have been in the past, it's things like facilitating youth discussions, building civic engagement projects, community network mapping, outreach, recruitment, and inclusive program design. So it is a real great benefit of this program, being able to connect with people that are doing similar work and to have that support while you're walking through it for 2 years. So some of our goals for the project. So if you guys are, we're walking through kind of what, you get if you apply or what you're applying for. So what are our goals? And, we do this because we really believe being transparent about the goals that we're trying to achieve. And 5+ years of evaluation feedback on the program have shown us that while TRL is impactful to all youth who regularly attend, It can be a particularly positive experience for youth who don't normally attend these kinds of programs or have significant barriers to participating on a regular basis. We call these groups hidden and missing youth voices, and we found that these voices tend to be youth of color and youth experiencing economic hardships. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we decided to go in that direction in a second. But for this reason, these are our main audiences. You may have noticed in the application and guidelines that we really strongly call out those audiences and prioritize them, and what libraries that are participating to prioritize outreach and the inclusion of those audiences. And we will expect you to make a strong effort to recruit them into the program. So our first goal for the project then is to work with libraries to engage and encourage those hidden and missing voices to participate in humanities programming. The beauty of TRL is that it can be adapted to any group's needs, interests, and experiences. So, you're really using the tool of the humanities to engage and build relationships with those young people. Our second goal is to help libraries gain more experience and confidence to, again, build relationships with those audiences and offer those services for those youth. Program feedback over the years has shown us that TRL is just as impactful for staff as it is for youth. For many of them, TRL has become a tool they use to build meaningful relationships with young people, and staff has noted that they not only build more confidence in working with young people, but they've discovered strategies for building more inclusive and relevant programming for the target audiences. So I wanted to actually ask you guys what brought you here today. So we're going to do a little poll. So we told you a little bit about our own goals, but I'd love to hear why you guys are interested in the program. So I'm going to launch a little poll. Actually, let me make sure that I'm launching the right one. Okay, so go poll. The one I want the project interest poll. Okay, so in a second, I'm going to launch a poll, and the question is, what interests you about the 2019-2021 Teen Reading Lounge project? And you can select all that apply. There's also, if you don't see an answer here if the reason why you're attracted to the program isn't represented on this poll, you can type it into the chat box, because we'd love to know. So I'm going to launch the poll now and give folks about 30 seconds to reply. So here we go. Okay, so on your screen, you should see the poll, and you can start responding. Awesome, I see some of you responding. Great, we have about 29 seconds left. Oh, oops, it's counting up. Let's give it another 10 seconds. Great, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the poll now and let you guys see the results. All right, here we go. Hopefully you guys can see the results on your screen. And it's interesting, I'm seeing a lot. So 87% of you are saying that the focus on youth from economically challenged communities is very interesting to you, what's interesting you to this project. Of course, funding is up there, focus on youth from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, connection to community engagement, focus on skill building, opportunity to connect with books. This is great. This gives us a good sense of why you guys are interested in the project. So thank you so much for, oh, there you go. Now I'm sharing them. Hopefully now you can see them. Great. It gives us a little bit of information about why you guys are here. So thank you for that. Awesome. And I did see that a few folks chatted in. So let me see if there's any. Okay. I just shared the results. So hopefully you guys can. Great. Thanks. Okay. So let's move on. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, here we go, the hidden and missing youth voices. So I mentioned earlier in the project goals that, and many of you are here because of those, those priority audiences. And, you know, we thought it was important when we were preparing the grant application to kind of, you know, have a little bit of a justification as to why we were going after, you know, why we're prioritizing those audiences, and we want libraries to do the same. And, you know, I think over the past several years, you know, we've seen great demographics, you know, changes in our state. Migration patterns from county to county are changing, so the racial and ethnic makeup of our PA communities may also be changing as a result of that. And I know many of you are seeing that, and it's really unique to your communities, who's settling there, who's living there, who's moving in, who's moving out. We also know that youth in all 67 counties are living in poverty, and white rural poverty is particularly prevalent in our state. And again, I know many of you guys are from smaller rural libraries and know this well. Black and brown youth experiencing poverty are also more likely to face barriers to quality after-school opportunities because of structural racism, disinvestment, and implicit bias. We often get the question, you know, why focus on a particular audience? Shouldn't youth programs be for all youth, regardless of background and life experience? And we say yes, but we also know that special effort needs to be made to include these young people in programming, because there may be barriers to participation. Also, I think you guys as libraries are reckoning with a lot of community changes, you know, and being able to kind of consider that really intentionally and figure out how to address that is something that I know all of you guys are thinking about. So we hope that TRL, you know, helps with that. So I'm going to do one more poll because we are curious about the racial and ethnic makeup in your communities as well. So let's do another poll here. Let's see if I can get this going. All right, so stop sharing results. So we're going to do our community demographic poll, and I'm going to launch the poll. Again, you can select all answers, you know, as many answers as apply to you. And then there is an other category, which I don't love, but, you know, if there are other audiences that are not represented here, feel free to chat them in the box to us. So I'm going to launch poll now. You should be able to see it. I'm going to give folks about 30 seconds to complete it. Great. Awesome. I'm seeing answers come in. We'll give it about 10 more seconds. Great, great. So I'm going to end the poll. Now I'm going to share results. Okay, you guys should be able to see the results now. So, you know, not surprisingly, a lot of you guys are working, of course, with white and Caucasian audiences. We see representation from Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish audiences, Black or African American, Asian and Asian Indian, Middle Eastern, North African, American Indian, and I see some of you also did select the other, and I'll take a look at the chat box in a little bit to see what other audiences might be in there. So thank you so much for giving us a sense of who you're working with. So we're going to stop sharing these results now and move on. Great, thank you for that. Thanks for participating in that. So one other thing we want to mention, you know, when we're thinking about those hidden and missing voices, and a lot of times, again, they're young people that are from different racial and ethnic backgrounds and maybe dealing with socioeconomic challenges, the idea of equity starts to, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, they kind of all are related. And in recent years, we've positioned TRL to help libraries think about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And many times we've found with programming, you know, there used to be this feeling, if you build it, they will come. If we appeal to the general masses, then we've done our job, and we're kind of just, you know, kind of getting the general, you know, programs are built, you know, so they're more general and not necessarily specific. You know, and we feel like that's equality, not equity. Equity requires that we recognize special efforts may need to be made to engage different kinds of youth, and we need to take intentional steps to acknowledge the diversity of our community and then the commitment to including those audiences by actively reaching out, building relationships, and inviting them to have a seat at the table with us. Not just to deliver a program to them, but to ask them about their ideas and perspectives and experiences. The 2019-2021 TRL project helps libraries think more deeply about the connection of DEI and engaging young people in programs and services. So I do want to be honest and say that this, I don't know if you guys, some of you guys may know, this image has been hotly contested online about whether or not it actually does depict equity and whether or not it's really, you know, if it's really a fair depiction of this. But I think the thing to take away is that equality and equity, those panels, I think really starkly shows the difference that it's, again, it's not equal. It's not everybody gets the same thing, but sometimes you have to differentiate in order to get different audiences, to include different audiences. And then, you know, the last panel about liberation, I think ultimately what we're trying to do with TRL is for folks in the library to really think about how they can remove those barriers, right? So that we don't have to necessarily, to just say that, to remove those barriers, because that's really what we're all trying to achieve. And TRL, you know, this project is really, we're hoping for libraries that are ready to explore these concepts in relation to how programming plays out and recruitment plays out. So the final thing that I'm going to say kind of about the development and the background and kind of the why of Teen Reading Lounge is that this model is based on positive youth development research, which shows that positive adult and peer interactions can improve the quality of a young person's life. And we really do believe that the humanities have a special role to play here, because young people are at a time in their lives where they're exploring who they are, how they fit into the world, they're wrestling with their identity, they're exploring how the world works, its systems and its structures and how that relates to them. And the humanities, which document how we live our lives in the context in which we do that, provide a way for you to build the thinking and dialogue skills that help them really think through this and navigate this. And we also focus on building socio-emotional skills that are related to PYD or positive youth development, things like empathy, social awareness, self-awareness, critical thinking, and collaboration. So what do we hope to accomplish through all of this? So we do rigorously evaluate, and we have over the years, the TRL program. And I think, you know, as we've learned throughout the years what this, you know, what the impact has been on staff and what the impact, we hope the impact is on youth, and usually, you know, we've been lucky to see that it does happen, that there are some key things that we really want our libraries to accomplish. You guys will also have some goals, and we also welcome that as well, because we want you to come at this. We want to meet you guys where you are. But I think, you know, if you look at this slide, you'll probably see that a lot of those goals probably align with what we're looking for as well. That's why you're here today and why you're interested in this. So some things to call out are that we hope that library staff builds a more positive relationships with diverse youth in their community, that they recognize and understand the role the humanities can play in positive youth development so that they can continue to do that in their programming that they do. And that they build more confidence having difficult conversations with young people. You know, this is more than a book club. We've found that young people are really talking about themes and issues that can get a little, you know, intense. I mean, they're reading books about police brutality, about racism, about gender identity, about sexuality, you know, and they're going to want to talk about that. And so we hope to, you know, build libraries' confidence or help to bolster the skills that library staff already have to have those conversations. We hope that youth feel welcome at the library and in these programs, because as we said before, sometimes they may not even be accessing them. We hope that youth build those critical thinking skills, the socio-emotional skills that I talked about earlier, and that they also build confidence to have difficult conversations with peers. Because that's really, you know, the whole point of the program is that they really learn how to articulate how they think about these things and feel welcome to do that as a way to kind of grow into adults that can really contribute to society. So a few other items that I just want to check off before we get to kind of the nitty-gritty of expectations and how to apply and all that good stuff. But I really hope that this is giving you guys a good sense of where we're coming from and the kinds of libraries that we hope really become a part of this. You know, we want to be a part of this project. So one of the biggest things, one of the biggest activities that libraries who are selected for the program will have to do first is find what we call that Teen Reading Lounge facilitator. This person must be an outside community member, so it's not someone who's on staff already. And the reason why we do that is because we really have seen that having another perspective, not only, number one, does it help support the work, because we know you guys are understaffed, overworked, and under-resourced. So having someone else there really, really helps, right? It gives you the space to think about some other things while you have someone engaged that's helping with the actual engagement of the young people. So the Teen Reading Lounge facilitator also can help build capacity in staff. If you have staff who say are not great at facilitating discussion yet, this facilitator can help come in and help teach, you know, and train the staff on how to do that. The other thing too to mention, the facilitator should have a solid understanding of the experiences of the intended audience and really some lived experience. So if you're having a lot of young people coming from a particular kind of background, it would be a good idea to have that facilitator reflect who those young people are. We've seen that this can really have a positive effect on young people. They have someone to connect to, and they have someone who understands kind of where they're coming from, which is really a great thing and can really spark a lot of learning in the young people. The other thing too to consider is that, the other thing I want to mention too is that they can be from a humanities background, education background, arts education, social work, or other relevant youth background where they're working with young people and know a lot about young people. We often get that question, who should we be looking for? And we will provide kind of a job description for this because, again, you will be recruiting this person and use some of the funding that you get to pay for this person's time and experience in the project. And to that point, there's a link here about fair living wages. And for your own community, you can actually click on that link when I share these slides and put in your own community and figure out what a fair living wage looks like for an individual that you would be paying. So we recommend that if you're accepted to the program and when you're building the budget, to look at that fair living wage calculator and use that to figure out what the honorarium for the facilitator would be. We'll also work with you to talk about how much time they typically put in their project and all that good stuff. So you don't need someone when you apply now, but this is something that, again, you should be aware of. If you are selected for the program, you will be asked to do this. This is one of the first things that you'll have to do. Okay, so building your TRL series, this is the second question we get, is that, okay, so there's the project and then there's the program. What does the program, what does the series look like on site? So I'm gonna encourage you guys to go visit our blog and our website to read stories about current TRL and past TRL projects to get a sense of what they look like. But here are some kind of, markers of what the TRL series will look like. First of all, you'll work with your young people to build this series so that it is relevant and unique to them. So there's no, required book list or anything like that. And I want to mention too that I think TRL has become much more than just a book club. And I think that is something that needs to be said. In the past couple of years, it really has been elevated to just, young people sitting around talking about books. There's projects, there's civic engagement projects that have been a part of it. And I think it's really has become, a way, the text really has become a springboard for you to explore big ideas as a way to build leadership skills, like critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So a few things to consider though is that we're saying, like, when you're building the TRL series per year, you would do at least 12 sessions. Those sessions are usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. That all depends on your community. They'll feature, of course, the humanities. You'll have some featured text that you guys choose together. It can be anything from, straight books like YA books to articles to poems to theater, whatever you guys decide together. There's that, of course, peer-to-peer facilitated discussion, and adults will be involved in that process as well, including the facilitator. You'll also do some special projects. You might have some guest speakers. You might have some workshops. We've done comic book workshops, all sorts of different things. And then the big kind of thing that you guys will be building to is the civic engagement or community project, particularly in year 2. This can happen earlier. We might have some sites that are ready to do this in year 1, and that's great. But, at least in year 2, we definitely want to see some sort of civic engagement project that's connecting those themes to what's happening in the community and giving young people an opportunity to address it. So again, check out our blog and our website for more on that. Finally, the TRL Learning Network, I mentioned this before. This is kind of the star right now, the thing that we are very, very excited about, because again, this is more than just implementing a program. This is also about the libraries learning how to do this work and going back and, you know, trying it out with their young people and in their libraries. So, you know, it's an opportunity to learn with folks doing similar work from around the state, and with addition of the facilitators, you'll also get the added bonus of voices from outside of the library. So you may have educators, artists, social workers, you know, other folks that are coming in that are working with young people, but working with them in a different space and in a different way. And you'll also get an opportunity to learn from them in addition to the other library staffers that are doing the program. Our learning activities are designed to support and train sites as they work with youth, to plan and implement the Teen Reading Lounge series each year. Activities are made up of in-person workshops, webinars, virtual trainings, community of practice calls, and I mentioned earlier, one-on-one support with PH staff and some of our special advisors. To give you a sense of the depth and breadth of activities, we've typically offered a kickoff in-person workshop in the fall, followed by about 5 or 6 community of practice calls, usually scheduled every other month throughout the year. And in addition, we've been, in the past couple of years, have been offering about 2 virtual webinars or conversations on particular topics, things like civic engagement or how to facilitate. And those will, you know, we're building the learning network activities for this year, but those are the kinds of things you can expect. We also would really love to do another convening in the spring. This would be new for this year. We'd love to bring sites back together after 5 to 6 months and see, you know, kind of what they're learning and do some more of that in-depth relationship building with one another. Like I mentioned, we're still planning the activities for this year, but on this screen, you'll see some of the topics that we've covered in the past to give you a sense of, you know, where our head's at, like what kind of stuff we would be talking about. So I hope that helps, you know, give you a little bit of sense of the TRL Learning Network. So after all of this, you know, I wanted to move into, you know, now that we have the whys and kind of what our goals are for the program behind us, I wanted to talk about the next set of slides will help you kind of determine whether or not this is the right opportunity for you. And we're trying to be very, you know, practical and honest about what we're looking for and how to kind of apply for the program. So in terms of expectations, you know, again, we mentioned contracting, identifying contracting with a community member to serve as program facilitator for the program. That's going to be an expectation of the sites we select. To develop and run a Teen Reading Lounge series each year that features strong humanities content. And again, that's about 12 sessions per year that'll turn out to be. Recruit at least 10 to 15 youth to participate in the project per year with priority focus on youth of color and youth that are experiencing poverty. And, you know, to do that, we're going to, you know, you guys will probably be working with some community partners or individuals in the community that can help you connect and recruit these young people. We're also going to ask you to match the grant each year through in-kind or cash contributions, and Celeste is going to talk about the details of that in a second. And then the site coordinator and facilitator must actively participate in the TRL learning community. And the site coordinator, that's the word we use for the library staffer on site, who's basically our contact and is coordinating the program. That could be anybody from a library director to a youth services program to a part-time person. We've seen everybody kind of play the role of site coordinator depending on the size of the library and what the staffing makeup is. So I'm going to hand things over to Celeste, Celeste is our grants manager and program administrator, and she's going to talk about the matching requirements. There you go, Celeste, you're on screen now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that you were able to join us today. I'm going to be speaking on a topic that everybody sort of gets a little weird about because they don't quite understand it, and that's cost share. Cost share is the value of the contributions made by your libraries to the project. There's a lot of confusion about this subject, and selected sites will receive more in-depth information. This is just a brief outline to make you aware of this requirement, because you may need to use this as part of your decision-making process as to whether or not you feel you can support this program. Cost share can be met either through cash, which is donations that the library may receive from any source other than another federal agency, but from any source, locally or nationally, or in kind. And this is where sometimes it gets a little complicated for people, but on the other hand, this is where you will most likely find the bulk of your cost share. These are items that are provided to you free of charge or at a discounted rate, and they can be things like food, supplies, materials, services, or staff and volunteer time. Don't forget about volunteers. Their time is valuable, and even if all they're doing is making photocopies to distribute or standing in the room to make sure people fill out the attendance sheet, their time is valuable, and we can help you to put a value on that time. There are national standards for that, and that can end up being a big part of your cost share. So just bear in mind that there are a lot of different things that go into that cost share. For the first year of the grant, you will be required to match 50% of the funds you receive from PHC. That means your match is going to have to be at least $4,000. The second year, we expect the matching requirement will be at least 75% of what we provide. We will finalize that amount and notify you prior to the second year. We strongly encourage you to match the grant dollar for dollar if possible. But we realize that it may not be possible for some of you or for all of you, but that's why we're not making it a requirement at this time. As I stated earlier, we'll provide a whole lot more information on this subject to the sites that are selected. And very often that's a one-on-one with me for anyone who has questions. I can go in depth with you and help you identify sources. If there's any questions at all about cost share, feel free to contact me. You'll have my contact info at the end of this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Celeste. So one of the other things I want to mention, so two things, Celeste is a guru with cost share. So, once sites are selected, definitely reach out to her, or if you have questions because you're trying to determine whether or not you can actually do it, reach out to her. And number two, I think this really does show that you guys, those that are selected for the program are bringing something to the table here, that you are putting in staff time. There's a considerable amount of stuff that goes into doing this program once you're become, one of the libraries in the cohort. So hopefully that helps, just give you a sense of what would be expected. That's one of the requirements and expectations of the sites that will be selected. So eligibility and deadline. So I just wanted to mention that the deadline is 11:59 p.m. on May 31st. We're asking folks to submit the application online through SurveyMonkey. I'm going to talk about that in a second because you guys are probably like, why SurveyMonkey? But yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. I do want to mention that public libraries and PA are eligible for the project. But I did want to mention, we did have some questions about some libraries that are designated as 501c3, but they don't get any state aid. And we checked in with the Office of Commonwealth Libraries, and they told us that non-state aided libraries cannot receive LSTA funding at this time. So, if any of the libraries on the line are in that category, yeah, you wouldn't be eligible for the project or for funding. But you can reach out to me if you have questions about this too. And I also wanted to mention that you can't currently be receiving funding from PHC for TRL. I don't think anybody on this call falls into that category. And then we often are asked, you don't need to have do we need to have a teen space because it's called the lounge, the teen reading lounge. I will say you don't need to have a designated teen space. It's great if you do, that's wonderful. But the opportunity to carve out a little bit of space for programming or for young people to gather is really crucial. So think about that. Believe me, I've been to some small libraries in PA and they're able to make this fly. So I think, even if you think, wow, there's no way, I think there's a way. You guys can do it very creatively, even if you don't have a huge space. We've seen folks transform a little corner in the library into a great little teen reading lounge space, and it's made a lot of difference. We'd also like to see some evidence that library and library staff is engaging with youth, particularly, with the audiences that we're prioritizing, and that staff, director, and board support is key, that they're supporting the program, because that's the way that, the project can really take root. So determining project fit. So this kind of relates, so I'm going to talk in a second about the selection criteria, but determining project fit, we kind of thought to ourselves, okay, so there's a lot of interest in the program. How do folks kind of figure out, is this really the right project for me? So we came up with some questions here for you guys, almost like a checklist. You guys can go back and talk about this as a staff or, whoever's submitting the application to kind of think about this. So things like, are we committed to reaching out to the prioritized audiences we talked about? Are we willing to find those community partners or connectors that can help us reach those audiences? Are we committed to using the humanities, particularly a discussion model, to engage youth? Are we committed to giving youth leadership opportunities and to assist with program development, really letting them take a step up into leadership roles? This may not happen right away, but we want to see that you guys are making a good faith effort to make the space for those young people to step up and really help you with program development and even program delivery. Maybe in year 2, they can serve as facilitators. You know, there's all sorts of places that you can go with this. Again, is staff and leadership supportive of youth in the library? This really gets to, are you guys willing to create a culture create and cultivate a culture where TRLs can take root and thrive, and that starts with letting youth be in the library and kind of meeting them where they are and making space for them. And then I'm going to skip the next one. I'm going to go back to that in a second. The last bullet point, are you guys committed to the learning aspect of this? So it's not just about implementing a program and saying, here's the program off the shelf, we're going to implement it, and there you go. This is really about the learning network. Although there's training and workshops and all that good stuff to help you think about strategies and stuff, a lot of this is reflection. You guys are going to think about big issues, you know, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that plays out in your community, how that plays out in your library. You're going to explore your own thoughts and beliefs around these issues, and then figuring out how to, you know, reckon with that as you guys are engaging these young people, because, you know, we've seen that this is a big growth area for folks, you know, really thinking hand in hand. A lot of times I just read this article about how a lot of times people think these are not my issues, but you guys, I think you guys know this. I want to say, I know you guys know this. They are our issues. It's not just about programming. It's about how we're relating to the young people, to the people that are living our community, particularly the young people, because that's who we're focusing on here. And then I'm going to go back to bullet point, the second from the bottom. So I want to say, if you are already a library that thinks they have the resources to do this program, you know, consider whether or not this is the right opportunity for you. Again, it's that whole idea of, are you just looking for a program in the box to easily implement? You know, because if that's the case, there are a lot of resources online for you guys on our website for you guys to look at. We have a program development guide. You know, there may be opportunities for you guys to just look at those and integrate some of the TRL, you know, aspects into programming that you're already doing. Again, I think the biggest takeaway here is that, yes, you guys will be designing teen reading lounge with young people, and that's going to be awesome and fun. You guys are going to do creative, awesome things. But those that are accepted, you know, to be a part of the cohort really have to commit to some of that reflection and learning, especially around those DEI issues. So selection criteria, I don't think I necessarily have to run through this. Again, I'll just point out that, you know, we'll be looking for evidence that libraries are open to reflecting on how personal bias and existing program practices may create barriers for youth of color and youth from low-income backgrounds. And that the last one, the reason why we think about that is because, you know, you may not continue Teen Reading Lounge wholesale once you're done the 2-year project, right? But we want you guys to have some learning that you can take back and apply to the other things that you're doing with young people. I mean, we would love for you to continue TRL. We've seen libraries do that, and it's possible, but really hear the learning, because that's where the impact in young people, that's how that happens, right? So you guys are kind of the first line of defense there, or the first reach out there. So yeah, I will share these slides so you guys can dig into that selection criteria a little more. It's also in the guidelines. So just a few tips for completing the application. I did mention the SurveyMonkey thing. SurveyMonkey is not designed for online applications, but we're using it because it's what we got right now. And we started with this 2 years ago, and it works okay. But the one thing that you have to recognize about it is that you can't like fill out the application and then go back to it and finish it. You know, you have to have everything ready before you get to the SurveyMonkey link, because SurveyMonkey won't save it for you. You'll have to start like a whole new thing again. And that makes us crazy because then we have like 1 million applications and we're trying to figure out which one's actually completed, you know, versus half finished. So I would recommend going to our website, downloading the guidelines, reading those, and then downloading the Word version of the application, filling that out in its entirety, and then entering it all into SurveyMonkey once you've done that. Also, look at your demographics. We asked for those. American Fact Finder, there are links here, and the Power Library demographic profiles on the Office of Commonwealth Library site is great You can download a profile of your community to see who's living and using the library, and based on the poll results, you guys may already know some of that, so that's great. So great, so those are some completing the application tips, and anything else I want to see there? One other thing, talk to youth about the opportunity. If you already have them engaged, ask them about it. You know, what do they think? Maybe they can even help you fill out the application. Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to open it for questions, and I did notice that folks are chatting at me. I haven't been ignoring you. Well, I have, but now I'm going to actually take a look at some of what. Let me see if I can get to that. Where did the chat go? Why is that not coming up? Okay. All right, so we have a few things. Okay, so Leanne Iacovelli is asking, how new does our project have to be in year 2? If we like a project done in the past, can we do it too? So it's a good question. I don't necessarily think it has to be new per se. I think what we'd want to see is that you guys are continuing to learn and integrating new strategies. But the content itself is something that you'll all build together. And if young people like a certain kind of reading or topic, there's nothing to say that you can't continue to focus on that. But if you have like a more specific question, Leanne, then you can reach out to me. I hope I'm understanding what you're asking. You can always reach out and email me if you have, you know, if you're thinking about something specific. Hmm?
Do you think she's asking that the second year has to be a different project than the first year?
Oh, you mean for community engagement?
Yeah, for the teen reading loss, so there's year 1 and then there's year 2. Do they have to be separate projects?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, Mimi, who's our director of programs, is here with us, and she's saying that maybe Leanne is asking, you know, do they have to be separate projects in terms of like the community engagement projects or anything? No, you know, yeah, it's one continuous thing. And you guys will build that with your young people, so it'll be very specific to what they want to do. So those books, those readings, those hands-on projects, even the civic engagement project will really, it'll have the young people stamp on it. So Sharon Savage is saying, we're seeing an increase of mixed race patrons as well. There's a local increase in Hispanic as well as Middle Eastern, but we do not serve them on a regular basis. Thank you, Sharon. So this is probably in response to the polling. So thank you for some detail there. And then Danielle is saying, is the diverse aspect, she's asking, is the diverse aspect specific to race, or would the LGBTQ+ community also be included? Danielle, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that in Teen Reading Lounge. In fact, currently, that's a big topic that comes up. Again, we are inclusive in terms of different. One of the things that we'll do at the beginning with selected libraries is thinking about the different groups that are in their community. And we will focus on race and ethnicity and also socioeconomic background, but there is space to think about these other groups because we do recognize that you guys are also seeing other kinds of groups, you know, with different designations kind of coming out of, you know, the work you're doing. So absolutely they can be included, but we do want to see a good faith effort that you're trying to reach, you know, whoever the diverse group is in your community, and also those young people that are dealing with socioeconomic challenges. So Laura is asking, if anyone is looking for some suggestions for books, check out Project Lit Community. They're selecting some amazing contemporary YA literature. Thank you for that, Laura. That's a great resource. Something that I will add to my list too. That's awesome. And then Pam is asking, what strategies do libraries use to get their youth population to engage with the TRL program? Pam, this is a great question, and I think this really, really depends on the community itself. Again, it depends on the group and the community. I think what we've seen work a lot is we have a group in the B.F. Jones Memorial Library in Aliquippa in Beaver County. They had a hard time connecting with, they're in Aliquippa, which is a very racially diverse area, and also there's a lot of economic challenges in that area. In fact, the community right across the street is really, I mean, you can see the stark difference between this big, huge, beautiful library building and some of the housing, rundown housing that's, you know, unfortunately kind of right across the street. So they worked with a local community group, a social service and youth organization called Aliquippa Impact, and they had to create a relationship with that group. So they kind of, knew that they wanted to engage some of those young people, particularly young people from African American and Latinx backgrounds, and some of those young people were also dealing with socioeconomic challenges. So they went, basically down the road to Aliquippa Impact and said, we know you guys are reaching these audiences. Can we partner together to do that? We have this Teen Reading Lounge program. We'd love to work with you on it. So they've done a little bit of outreach programming with them, bringing TRL to them. There's a great story on our website about that and about how that's worked out. So that's one strategy. I think the community partner or individual, what we're calling the connector, can really, really help kind of bridge those divides or help, library staff make connections with those audiences that maybe they're a little bit disconnected from, to be frank about it. That's a great question. Any other questions? I had two other questions come in early from Sarah from the Marple Library. And I thought, I'd share with you guys, because some of you guys may be wondering about this as well. Our library, Sarah's asking, our library already employs a part-time teen coordinator who is doing community outreach as part of her work. Would we be required, if we were chosen for the grant, to hire an additional consultant or teen coordinator as part of this grant project? I want to tell you, no, you don't have to hire anybody else except for that community facilitator person who you'll contract with. And again, we'll work with libraries to kind of go through that process. You can use, again, some of the money on part-time staffing up to 25 hours. So the only other thing you could do is maybe get a volunteer and actually pay that person to do a little bit more on the project if staffing is an issue. But whoever is at the library as the staffer, that's fine. If that person is doing teen programming or is charged with doing teen programming, you can use who's already in-house for sure. Just one thing to note, that if they're full-time, money can't go to offset their time. I hope that helps clarify that. And then her other question is, our library's teen group includes several teens with Tourette's and others on the autism spectrum. We are interested in expanding this focus as a target audience for TRL. Would the grant, if we were chosen for the grant, is this okay, even though the state focus is low income and or youth of color? Again, just like I mentioned with our other question about, to Danielle, about LGBTQ, we're open to all of those. We have a library in Priestley Forsyth that has a lot of young people on the autism and Asperger's that are, that have that going on in their lives, and they have done great things with the program. They really have been participating in the program for years, and the library has really made that a focus because that's, that's who's coming to the program. They're really getting a lot out of it. So I think. Okay, I'm seeing a couple more questions come in. Okay, so Leanne is asking for some clarification, okay? So it's not 12 sessions in 1 year, it's 12 sessions plus a civic engagement project in year 2. Okay, great. So Leanne, I'm gonna provide a little bit more clarity around this. So yeah, so 12 sessions per year is what a TRL series we consider at least 12 sessions. So that's first and foremost. And those will be a combination of reading, discussion, projects, theme-based conversations. And then in addition to that is the civic engagement project. How you weave that civic engagement project in really depends on your site. We've seen libraries focus those 12 sessions on working up to a big civic engagement project, like maybe community beautification. We've had libraries collect canned goods. We've had libraries do a video on gun control and their thoughts on gun control, particularly after the Parkland shooting last year. So, and that was like something they worked up to throughout the 12, throughout the year, throughout those 12 sessions. They designated some time for young people to kind of think about what that project would look like, in addition to discussing themes and ideas found in the books. So it's an end, but you can also do things to weave that in. And again, we would work with sites to figure out what, we would work with sites to show them some examples of that and then figure out ways in which you can integrate that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, Neem? No? Okay, and then Jamie's asking, could we develop this program with incarcerated youth or youth in partial hospitalization program specifically associated with their school day? or does the program have to be an after-school program at our library only? It's a great question. So the funding, Jamie, has to go to a library, but where the program takes place, I don't think it really matters. I mean, as long as the library is a major part of making the program happen, then yeah, and again, they have to be the grant holder, right? And the person who's coordinating the program should be a staffer, and then you're going to get that, you know, outside community facilitator to come in. I think these audiences are absolutely fine if that's something that you're working towards or already working with. I think the other thing to mention here too is that TRL, just as long as the actual essence of TRL isn't, you know, kind of, you know, cannibalized by another kind of program, then that's okay as well. The humanities and the TRL model really need to be front and center. How you implement that will, you know, be specific to your community, but I think this audience is absolutely fine. I think you could hold it. We've had libraries, again, hold the program at community organizations, you know, because they had to go to the young people as opposed to bringing the young people in the library. So I think that that is fine. And if Jamie, you know, you had additional questions, just let me know. Yep. Great. Also, I'm looking at the time, and it looks like we are getting there. So I want to thank you all for your questions. I also wanted to mention that if you have additional questions, you can email us. Let me get to that. So contact information is for me and for the great and good Celeste, who will be able to answer questions about cost share, or if you're, you know, you really want to think about the budget, be like, can we actually do this? Can we use the money on what we, you know, want to use the money on and all that good stuff? I think Celeste can help with some of that as well. We also have a Google Drive started. You can drop your questions in there as well. I will, you know, share all this. So again, you're going to get the slides. You're going to get the link to the Google Drive with the questions if you wanted to do it that way, or you can just email me directly. And you'll also get the recording of this. You can share it with libraries in your district. If you're a district consultant, you can absolutely share this. And everybody who signed up will get that, probably at the latest by Monday. I'm going to try to get it out by Friday. And we have one more chat. Let me just pick that up. How come this doesn't come up? There we go. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Christine. I'm glad it was helpful. So thank you all again. It looks like we're good to go. And I hope that this was, you know, illuminating and helped you guys consider whether or not this is the right opportunity for you. We look forward to getting some applications. Thanks all.